Hi, I'd like to take a few minutes and talk to you about work-life balance and communication skills. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Karen Dunn of Karen Dunn Talent Development Consulting and Speaking. A whopping 94% of working professionals reported working more than 50 hours per week, and nearly half of them said that they worked more than 65 hours per week in a recent Harvard Business School survey. That's a lot of work, and I imagine that it can leave a lot of working women feeling a bit like this. Another recent survey looking at the percentage of household work that a working mother is responsible for has nearly, if you add up those last two columns, nearly 80% of working moms doing anywhere from 51 to 100%. So definitely over half of the household responsibilities. In fact, 30% are doing, so nearly a third are doing 60 or 76 to 100% of the household responsibilities. But if you look at other studies that look at household responsibilities in a bigger under a bigger umbrella, so not just who's doing the cleaning and the cooking and the shopping, but who's also doing things like arranging sleepovers and making sure that field trip permission slips get signed and making sure that on a cold day they have two matching mittens to head off to school with. If you add in those kind of things, some surveys put as high as 90 or 95% of household responsibilities. I'm imagining that this leaves working mothers feeling a bit like this. This is a phenomenon that we've been talking about for a couple of decades now, usually referred to as work-life balance. If you're looking for advice on work-life balance and you type in a Google search for work-life balance tips, it turns up nearly 12 million results. 12 million different sources offering you help with work-life balance. Forbes, for example, offers you 6 tips for better work-life balance. WebMD gives you tips to reclaim control. Work Awesome does better than Forbes by trying to offer you 10 tips to achieve work-life balance. And Salary.com does even better than that by offering you 14 steps to achieve work-life balance. But apparently we need none of this because there's 5 secrets to achieving and maintaining work-life balance. So forget the 14 steps. All you really need is 5 secrets. Maybe this is the reason why we haven't been able to figure it out, is because the advice we really need are just secrets. And if you're not sure that you need work-life balance or your work and life are imbalanced, how about taking a quiz? How is your work-life balance? And if you take this quiz, I'm pretty sure I can guarantee you what the results are going to show. So what's wrong with most of the advice offered on work-life balance? If there's 12 million, nearly 12 million different sources offering tips and advice and secrets and steps to work-life balance, how come we're still talking about it after a couple of decades? How come it's something that is still such a mystery to a lot of people trying to get it right and figure it out? Well, I have always found a lot of really interesting stuff on TEDx. So I did a TEDx search for work-life balance and found this gentleman here. Let's see what he has to offer. Okay, he's going to balance. He's actually doing a handstand balance on a small table.
You should see it from this side. Life balance is a concept that is intriguing and desirable and also completely unrealistic.
Okay, well, that's very impressive. But balancing on a small table isn't giving me really good, solid advice or any practical skills on how to actually handle my work-life balance situation. But maybe that's just his introduction. Maybe I'm not being completely fair. Let's see if he goes on to offer anything else. He's juggling. He's actually juggling. And I have the sound turned down on this video, so you're wondering, well, maybe he's saying something pithy and interesting to help. But I can guarantee you, he's actually talking about juggling. He is talking about how to juggle. And in that little snippet, he's talking about when you get used to juggling 3 balls, how you learn to juggle 4 balls instead. And so his whole point is that we just need to get better at juggling. And if you get good at juggling 3 balls, then you can figure out how to juggle 4 balls. And I found the whole thing kind of, well, patronizing in a way, as if somehow feeling overwhelmed and stressed was just my fault for not knowing how to better juggle. I mean, I get it, it's a metaphor, but it's still not very helpful. Let's see what this guy has to say.
Needs a total break from the operational side of your role so that you can freshen your perspective on what needs to be done.
Okay, so this charming gentleman with a really nice Australian accent seems to be suggesting that part of our work-life balance is that we're not taking vacations and long weekends. Well, American organizations typically have a set number of vacation days, and a lot of times not as many vacation days as they do in other countries around the world. And if you're a working parent, or even if you're not a working parent, you know that a lot of times your personal days and your vacation days get eaten up with other stuff that needs to be done. You have to stay home and wait for the cable guy. You have to stay home because your air conditioning is broken. You have to take a child to the doctor or stay home with them because they're sick. So sometimes our vacation days also get eaten up with the other stuff that we have to do in our life. And I don't know about you, but I haven't ever worked for an organization that blesses taking long weekends on a regular basis. His other tips, and he works from starting with 10 all the way up to 1. And if you look at what number 2 and number 1 is, which he seems to think is his most important tips, is number 2, love your job. Well, that's not the problem. I've had many jobs that I have loved, and I do love my job. But it doesn't mean that I'm not still feeling overwhelmed and overworked. And his number 1 tip, love your life? Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out a way that I feel less stressed so that I can enjoy my life. I thought this was an interesting little tip that I found. Kate White seems to offer, instead of multitasking, I look for ways to overlap things. Best example, when my kids were little, I had no time for hobbies, but I was dying to try bird watching. So I introduced it to my 7-year-old, thinking that he might like it too. He was hooked, and so we started doing bird watching together, and it became the perfect overlap of time together with a hobby for me. Well, I can't speak for you, but for me, unless I develop a burning curiosity to learn more about Minecraft or up the age limit for Little League Baseball to middle-aged people, I don't see myself necessarily sharing hobbies and activities with my kids as a solution to my work-life balance. Frequently what comes up on lists for work-life balance is yoga or meditation. And this one seems to suggest also that if you don't have time for yoga or meditation, you could simply do deep breathing exercises while you're commuting. Well, if you're already feeling overwhelmed, I find it highly unlikely that you can find time to sort of get in the zen with yoga or meditation. In fact, here's the wonderful Tina Fey showing us what it looked like when she tried to do yoga as a working and busy mom. Frequently what shows up on these lists as well is taking time for yourself, and how important it is for you to take time for yourself. And it offers this example of taking a bath. I don't know why this is the example that is always used for taking time for yourself, as if taking a bubble bath is a panacea for, all of your stress and problems. And but here's the thing. When you take time for yourself and you're already feeling overwhelmed, sometimes we feel so guilty and we feel so stressed out that all we do while we're taking time for ourselves is sitting there in a hot bath thinking of everything that we need to do when we get out of the bath, or feeling that we can't even enjoy the bath because of all the other stuff that we should be doing. So I'm wondering how helpful this really is. And by the way, 9 steps to the ultimate relaxing bath. 9 steps. That's kind of stressful in and of itself, that it takes 9 steps for me to even be able to get into the bath. Not 9. I can think of 3 tops. A recent trend is not to talk about work-life balance, but to talk about work-life integration. The idea here that you can get the best of both worlds if you don't try to separate them into different spheres. So you don't try to segment out, this is work and this is home, and that never the twain shall meet, that they're in like 2 different complete segmented areas of your life, but instead kind of intermingling or integrating the 2 together. I am suspicious about work-life integration because this is a wonderful picture and it makes work-life integration look great, but I highly suspect that work-life integration really practically isn't going to look much like this picture. That it's probably going to look a lot more like this, or like this, and sadly like this. And this is a real picture that showed up on a working woman's blog that she took. And so this isn't a staged photo. This is a real picture of real people. And you can see behind them, there's a soccer game going on. And they have their backs turned to the soccer game and all of them staring at their phones. Now, I'm not 100% sure that they're doing work, but I would imagine that some of them are checking their email or trying to keep up with work. And I worry about this idea of work-life integration. I worry that more and more and more of work will creep in to our home life. And I worry that there are some employers that will really take advantage of this work-life integration idea by expecting us to be on and be at work 24 hours a day. And many people that I hear are already complaining that they feel like this is increasingly happening in their workplace. So what do we have? We have advice that really our work-life balance problem is just a matter of time management. Well, I don't know if that's the case. We talked about the problem with taking more vacations. Probably all of us could do better with exercise, but when you're so busy, how do we find time to do more exercise? I found one site that very patronizingly tried to tell me that my biggest problem is that I simply need to learn to prioritize better. We talked about the problem with yoga and meditation. One site actually, and I think dangerously, suggested that we could handle work-life balance better if we just sleep less. Well, that's just bad for your health. And we talked about the problem with taking time for yourself when you can't relax or enjoy it, worrying about everything that you have to do. So what's really going on here? Well, the problem I see it is that we have too much on our plates. We have too much going on and too much to do. And I think what we really need, what we really struggle with to help us with our work-life balance, is trying to figure out a way to get stuff off of our plate. Not learn how to manage our time better, prioritize better, or squeeze in exercise and meditation, but getting some stuff off of our plate. Now, the solution to this sounds easy. Why don't we just ask for help? Why don't we just ask colleagues to take on more project work if we feel like the load is being shared unfairly? Why don't we just ask our family members to help out more? Our husbands and our children who are old enough to clean up after themselves. Why don't we just ask? Well, I read this really interesting book written by Linda Babcock and Sarah Lashiver a couple years ago called Women Don't Ask: Negotiation and the Gender Divide. Now, in this book, they go into a lot of reasons why women don't ask. And I'll talk a lot more about this in my actual presentation. why don't women ask? And what are some of the consequences of women not asking? I was talking about this with a female colleague of mine not too long ago, and we were empathizing with one another, talking about our reluctance to ask for help, and talking about the resentment that it caused, that we got short with our colleagues at work because we felt overstressed, that we sometimes zipped off, emails that weren't exactly tactful in work delegation, that we resented our husbands for not doing more, and actually even found ourselves angry at our own kids for not helping out more, and yet we found it very difficult to ask. And my female colleague said to me, and I thought that this was really interesting, she said, I feel like I only have two options sometimes. I feel like my only options are martyr or witch. I'm a martyr because I just go ahead and take it all on. I don't say a word to anybody. I figure this is my lot in life. This is how it's going to be. And so I just take it all on, and I go on secretly angry at my husband and my colleagues and my family and my boss, and I just take it. Or I'm a witch. I do, speak shortly with the people that I work with. I do find myself getting angry about what I perceive to be inequity of the way the workload is spread around. I do get frustrated by piling on of more and more project work when I feel I'm overwhelmed already. And it has an impact on how I feel about my job and the people that I work with. And then I go home and I nag my husband, and I go home and I yell at my children. So I feel like these are my only two options. Take it all on and be a martyr, or yell at everybody and be a witch. And so we looked at one another and we said, we both teach communication. We've both seen how transformational effective communication can be. Surely there is some help in being a communication scholar and being able to figure this stuff out. I have taught communication at the university level for over 20 years, and I have seen how effective, not just communication, but effective communication can help out. And I have to believe, and I think I do have come to believe, that effective communication can help us with work-life balance. It's not about time management, it's not about yoga, and it's not about bubble baths. So in this presentation, I'm going to cover and talk about what are the gender communication differences in work delegation. Is there a difference in the way that men delegate work and the way that women delegate work? And how do women sometimes struggle with delegating work? What are the gender differences in negotiation? And not just negotiation about salary and promotion and raises. If you look a lot at gender differences in negotiation, that seems to be the focus or the balance of sources talking about gender negotiation in raises and salary. But the thing is, we negotiate every day. In fact, there are some communication scholars who believe that almost every conversation that we have in some way is a negotiation of some sort. And there definitely are gender differences in the way that we negotiate. And finally, how can I better use delegation and negotiation tools at work and at home to be a real and practical solution to a work-life balance problem? What I hope to do in this presentation, what I plan to do is to give you a tool and allow you to practice that tool, and that tool as a practical and real solution. So I look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday, March 29th for this presentation on communication and work-life balance.